Throughout the history of film and television, the path of a child actor can be filled with shattered dreams and broken spirits. But often, some make it out to the other end in one piece. When Macaulay Culkin came out with his minor role in Uncle Buck...
Do you have kids?
No, I don't.
How come?
It's an even longer story.
Are you my dad's brother?
What's your record for consecutive questions asked?
38.
He then landed the role that put him in every household with 1990's Home Alone. It was all uphill from there. The Home Alone sequel, My Girl, Richie Rich, The Good Son. Within 4 years, at just 5 years old, growing in to be 9, he was a consistent face you would see in a new movie every year. At that young of an age, all the stress seemed to force him to take a break for several years until he could come back and do anything else. From 94 until 2003, Culkin was nowhere. And then he pops up in the 2003 film Party Monster alongside Seth Green, and he has been in and out of the industry steadily over the last 2 decades. The recent docuseries Quiet on Set showed us the trauma experienced by a lot of prominent figures in children's entertainment connected to the Nickelodeon studios. From what happened to Drake Bell to the downfall of Amanda Bynes, what happened to those involved that were caught in the darker side of those stories is heartbreaking. But there are some who came out of it without many scars, or at least scars that we know of. Whether it be abuse or neglect or just the stress of being a child actor, these brave souls enter this arena not knowing what the outcome is going to be. Then again, some don't get a second chance. River Phoenix made his debut at 15 years old with his roles in The Explorers and Stand By Me. He continued his career until 1993, where he unfortunately passed away to a drug overdose at only 23 years old. Brad Renfro would have a promising start to his career, getting a role in 1994's The Client, and the doors seemed to open for him automatically. Tom and Huck, Sleepers, Bully, Ghost World, Deuces Wild. For being only 12 years old when he started, he seemed to be able to push out a movie a year for the remainder of his career, until he passed away from an overdose in 2009 at only 20 years old. Drugs are simply an unfortunate vice that some of these young actors pick up just being exposed to Hollywood. It's an avoidable exposure that some do come back from, however, but those are still things that they can choose, things that they have some kind of control over. Then there are things that are simply just the forces of nature, things they have to battle with that are just outside of their control. Heather O'Rourke co-starred in one of the biggest horror movies of the 80s, Poltergeist. She's the young daughter living in a house haunted by spirits. She was only 7 when she landed this role. She would star in the 2 sequels for the film series until she unfortunately passed away from a cardiac arrest at only 12 years old. Cameron Boyce's first role was in 2008's Mirrors, where he starred alongside Kiefer Sutherland. He was only 8 years old. His career would continue as part of the major Disney series The Descendants, as well as co-starring in the grown-up films as the son of Adam Sandler. He unfortunately passed away at 20 years old due to complications with his epilepsy. I bring up these examples because we often miss these parts of history, because we either don't know or we just choose not to look at it. We don't know these stars directly, or perhaps we just never liked their work, but they are still people. They were young, and they had their entire lives to grow and enjoy and to entertain. Just to live is something they deserved. To live is often something we take for granted, because everyone has choices. And even if they don't, and it's just things that are out of their control, there's nothing anybody could have done about it. But when it comes to some stories, some pieces of this history, you can find the unfortunate few where the choices were taken from them. Judith Barsi was born on June 6, 1978 in Los Angeles, California. Her father, Joseph Barsi, and her mother, Maria, were immigrants who fled to the U.S. after the 1956 uprising of the Hungarian People's Republic. They weren't together when they left, but they would meet in the States years later. Joseph had a rough upbringing where those who worked with him in the States say he always spoke about having a miserable childhood. His parents were not involved, which coming from Hungary already makes it hard, since their culture is rooted in strong family connections. So all he did was work and drink. They called him Arizona Joe. Maria was impressed by this man. She saw him as a man who could offer security. But Joe had a temper that came out more when he was drunk. Those close to him say he would go off if he simply felt somebody was disrespecting the way he spoke due to his accent. He also liked to showboat, claiming to his friends that he served time for killing a man in a brawl, but those records have never been found. When Judith was born, it seemed Joseph had found a new reason to love the idea of family. The birth of his daughter meant a chance to revert the stigma, to start anew, and to do better than what was done to him. Not everyone can break the cycle of abuse, and Joseph might have had a chance, but he was a man stuck with certain perceptions of life. Maria's brother, Joseph Weldon, states, "Joseph once said, 'If my family life is gone, then life is not worth living.'" Maria immediately began setting Judith up for stardom at an early age. Her brother tried to deter her from this idea, stating, "I told Maria I wouldn't waste my time. I told her the chances are 1 in 10,000 that she would succeed." But despite all odds against her, the hard work paid off for Judith. She would get a break accidentally when a crew was shooting a commercial at an ice skating rink, and someone noticed her dancing better than anybody there, and she was only 5 years old, so they hired her to do the commercial. She then became the go-to child actress for just about every commercial over the next few years, starring in 72 major brand advertisements, from KFC to Mattel to McDonald's. Her first role in a non-commercial endeavor was in a 2-part television drama miniseries called Fatal Vision in 1984. She was 5 years old, but playing the part of a 3-year-old. Her next role was in an ABC police drama called Jessie, which was very short-lived. Out of 11 filmed episodes for the series, only 6 of them were ever aired. Judith's role was meant to be in episode 10. Her biggest year yet would come in 1985, where she landed a role in 3 television movies and had appearances on 3 major television shows. All of this by the time she was 7 years old and only doing acting for a year. Then comes 1986. Judith continues to make appearances on various popular series: Remington Steele, Punky Brewster, The Love Boat, Cheers.
Sam, you got a minute? Yeah, okay. I'd like you to meet my family.
She then gets her first major role starring alongside Gary Busey in an action film called Eye of the Tiger, where she plays Busey's daughter as he fights off a biker gang that is harassing his hometown. By 1987, she had 2 major roles in a thriller called Slam Dance, and in the horror film Jaws: The Revenge. She was 8 years old and looking to start 4th grade while averaging a salary of $100,000 a year. The equivalent in today's money would be $258,000. This was able to purchase her family a 3-bedroom home in the West Hills. She was still able to get roles playing a younger character, because although she was almost 9 years old, she was short and still looked kind of young for her age. Her growth became a concern, so she began hormone injections to help promote a more steady growth pattern. Despite the fame and fortune, her father continued to work in his career. However, he was noted as being angrier than ever, threatening to kill himself and his family on numerous occasions. Maria reported these threats to the police, but with no physical signs of abuse or neglect, there was nothing they could do. So she decided against pressing charges against him. Joseph was pulled over 3 times for drunk driving, and it seemed that he was spiraling out of control. At one point in '86, Joseph swore he would stop drinking, but it did not stop the threats. He would threaten Maria and Judith that he would cut their throats, burn the house down, and his compulsive behavior left them all on edge. Peter Givlin, someone who had worked with him closely, had stated, "Joe has told me 500 times that he was going to kill his wife. Quote, I tried to calm him down. I'd tell him, if you kill her, what will happen to Little One?" Little One was Joe's nickname for Judith. He would reply, "I gotta kill her too." Maria had discovered a letter from a relative back home that a member of her family had passed away. Joseph had hid this letter from her because he didn't want her to leave the country. At one point, the abuse left the verbal and moved into the physical. A friend of Judith said that she had told her of some of the abuse she was experiencing in the home, referring to one occasion where her father began throwing pots and pans around, one of them striking Judith and causing a nosebleed. The physical abuse would cause Judith to develop compulsive behaviors like plucking her eyelashes and other hair from her body, a condition called trichotillomania. By 1988, Judith was still active, getting roles in Growing Pains and The Tracy Ullman Show.
Oh, hi. My mommy said I could come downstairs all by myself and have a taco and a Coke. Coming right up.
But she would eventually break down in front of her agent from all of the abuse. This caused her mother to seek help from a psychiatrist. After this, it was found that Judith was suffering from severe physical and emotional abuse, leading the psychiatrist to report their findings to Child Protective Services. Maria had the case dropped. After this event, she had made another decision to help her daughter and chose instead to begin the process of divorce from Joseph. She rented out an apartment in Panorama City for her and Judith to move once all was said and done. Maria was told by many who were close to her to follow through with this and to leave as soon as possible. But she hesitated because she didn't want to lose all of their belongings. On July 28th, 1988, the bodies of Maria and Judith Barsi were discovered in their home. It was determined that they were covered in gasoline and burned alive. Joseph's body was found in the garage. He had shot himself in the head. Prior to the murder-suicide, Judith was about to enter the realm of voice acting, as she became part of the production for two major animations of the late 80s. Later in 1988, The Land Before Time is released, where Judith is the voice of Ducky, a child dinosaur who teams up with other children dinosaurs to go on an adventure to find food.
What is your name? Baby, you cannot talk yet. Huh? Huh?
But the saddest role that was released posthumously was her part in 1989's All Dogs Go to Heaven, as the voice of Anne-Marie, an orphan girl that makes friends with a reincarnated German shepherd, Charlie, voiced by Burt Reynolds. The production of the film started in 1987. Most of Judith's part was already finished. They were still working on the film, and Judith's death was a year prior to its official release. Reynolds recorded his lines after Judith had recorded hers, and by the time Reynolds was in studio, Judith had already been murdered. Her last lines in this film are the last lines she ever recorded, and Reynolds is hearing these lines for the first time. While trying to finish his own, the sadness expressed in his voice is genuine, as the lines delivered might have been meant for the sad ending of the script, but the real sadness was Burt knowing these were the actual last words of a young girl who was taken from this world far too soon.
I come to say goodbye.
Where are you going?
Just on a little trip.
Oh, Charlie, I'll miss you.
Yeah. I'll miss you too, Squeaker.
Charlie, will I ever see you again?
Sure. Sure you will, kid. You know, goodbyes aren't forever.
Then, goodbye, Charlie. I love you.
Yeah. I love you too.
Don Bluth was the director of both of these animated films, and he has said on multiple occasions how absolutely astonished of her skills that he was. Quote, "She understood verbal direction even for the most sophisticated situations." Bluth stated it was always difficult to find child actors, and it was his intention to feature Judith extensively in his future productions. Judith had just turned 10 years old before her life was taken from her. She was a shining star in a sea of faces. Many saw the potential she had. With only 4 years acting, she built up 25 acting credits along with 72 commercials. But there were forces outside of her control that were unavoidable. Her young life remained dependent on those who committed the most harm. No one expects to hear stories like this. They are a wretched part of the history attached to some of the film and series we love. There are 14 Land Before Time films, And just if someone got curious to look up the voice actors, just for that first one, the one that started it all, they would find Judith. And if they looked a little further, they would find this story. It upsets us to think that this isn't a one-of-a-kind, bizarre, completely random occurrence, or just a happenstance of unluckiness. That poor Judith was blessed with a gift for entertaining, but also the curse of a troubled father. No one has it perfect, but knowing what happened to Judith is truly heartbreaking. She left a small legacy behind, but it's enough so that this little YouTube guy feels it's important enough to talk about 30 years later. Judith left us small pieces of herself to look back on, and if her story can teach you anything, let it show you that life is short. Keep doing what you love, and above all else, always find time to smile.
Pickle sure tastes good, huh? Mm-hmm. You gonna eat yours?
Yeah, sure.
I really like rancid pickles, Dad.
I like them too. Katie, do you want my pickle?
No, not if you're gonna eat it.
Not if... oh, okay.
Dad, when are you gonna eat that pickle?